Hey everybody, it's Femtrooper, and today we're going to be talking about big adventure JRPGs. So if you're like me, you like going on a huge adventure when it comes to JRPGs. And that's why today I'm going to tell you about some of my favorite series and games where you get to do just that. Before we get into it though, please make sure if you're not subscribed to please click subscribe, click like, and of course, tell me what are your favorite big adventure JRPGs. I literally want to know because it's my favorite kind of JRPG. First off, what am I talking about? Basically what I'm talking about is the JRPGs where you go globetrotting across the world or across a big map. You go to different towns, you see all sorts of variety with your adventure. I do like other JRPGs where you don't go on a big adventure. Some examples of that would be Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, Persona, Yokai Watch. Those are all really cool. They're just not the big adventure, and that's why I want to share those titles with you today. We're going to start off with a perfect example of going on an adventure, and that is the Dragon Quest series. You can literally pick any of them, all the way from 1 to 11, and you are going on a big adventure. These are simple stories, simple gameplay, cozy comfort JRPGs where you are going to get that variety. You're going to get a desert town. You're going to get a winter snow town. You're going to get that really cliche medieval town with the big castle. It's everything you want if you want this style of JRPG. I absolutely love them. I love the style of meeting different party members as you travel across a big space. Dragon Quest is great because you actually travel across the world. It's not just a continent. You actually go all over the place and you travel through different ways. You'll sometimes have a ship. Sometimes you'll have, a horse and wagon. Like, you are going all over the world. It's so much fun and you meet different people. Dragon Quest to me is perfect. The best part about Dragon Quest is that so many of them are available on modern consoles, so you can kind of play them however you want. You can play them on your phone, you can play them on the Switch, you can play them anywhere. So I highly recommend Dragon Quest if you haven't played them. My favorite is Dragon Quest 11, but I actually like every single one that I've played. I only have 3 more to go until I've actually finished and completed every single one, besides 10, of course, because it's an online-only game. But other than that, the series is fantastic, and I highly recommend it. The next recommendation I have is a game that is not only a big adventure, but a big adventure across time as well, and that is Chrono Trigger. Very obvious choice here, but I know there are still people who have yet to play this game, and it is so great because you have characters from different time periods. So the big adventure aspect is going across time. So it's really neat when you're going to the future, or you're going to the past in prehistoric times, or the past in medieval times, present day. It is fantastic. Great cast of characters, great story. You're gonna be engaged the whole time. Really interesting battle system that, yes, might not be as groundbreaking today, but back when it came out on the Super Nintendo, it was really interesting because it was kind of live. Like, everything was happening all at once. You weren't just waiting around. It's a really cool game. I don't know how you haven't played it yet if you haven't, but you definitely have to check out Chrono Trigger because it really does give you that grand sense of adventure. And like I said, that's my favorite kind of JRPG, so we got to talk about them. We can't talk about big adventure JRPGs without mentioning Earthbound. So I will briefly mention it here because it is my favorite game of all time, but it literally is a big world adventure. You start off in a small town in what appears to be America, and then you end up all over the world. It is really cool. So I know I've mentioned Earthbound a million times, but somehow, if you still haven't played it, you got to check it out because you literally go from town to town in Eagle Land, which is obviously based on the United States, but then you do end up in other towns across the world. It's really cool, and it's in a modern day setting, so that also makes it, a little bit more interesting, and it's modern day in a 90s way, so you gotta check that out. I gush about it all the time. It's Earthbound, so yes, please play that game. Another older game, but we just got a remake, and that is Super Mario RPG. Now, I obviously originally played it on the Super Nintendo, of course, and it's a fantastic adventure. The world map is not like a Final Fantasy where you're just wandering around. It's very, determined places, but you do go to different towns and you do experience a lot of different things and meet different people, and it really does feel like an adventure. So I love that aspect of it. It's really, really simple, cute, easy to understand. This is basic stuff, but has phenomenal music, and it's just very charming. Super Mario RPG is just a really special game, and it's very nostalgic for me because it's one of the first JRPGs I ever played, and it holds up today because the remake is basically a one-for-one shot remake. Like this, they didn't do a lot to it. They just kind of changed the graphics and put it on the Switch. So showing that they didn't really change anything just shows how much it holds up, because it came out in 1996 and they didn't really have to change anything to make it more user-friendly, you know what I mean? So definitely check it out. If you want to go have that experience where you're going to see different towns, meeting different party members, that's what this is. Here's one that is available on modern day consoles. I have the original version here on the PS3, and that is Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch. Really great game. This is like, probably one of the best JRPGs on the console, to be honest, on the PS3, because that was some dark times for JRPGs. And then when this came out, it was like, oh, finally, a breath of fresh air. It's made by Level 5 and Studio Ghibli, and it is like phenomenal. It's a really, really, really cool game because you are literally going on an adventure in another world. It's kind of like an isekai thing. And you get to go and meet different characters in that world. You walk on a world map, and yes, you get that Dragon Quest variety. There's like the desert town, and there is the winter snow town. It's perfect. It literally is old school JRPG, just with like modern day cel shaded graphics. The world map is gorgeous. You're walking around. Amazing music by Joe Hisaishi. It's just perfect. It's a really cool game. Some people complain about the gameplay and the AI being a little finicky, and sure, it may have a little bit of dated qualities to it, but overall, I really do think it's a great game because so many other aspects can trump anything that's a little bit negative, I guess. So definitely check out Ni no Kuni if you want that big, grandiose sense of adventure. You're a little kid and you meet your friends. Oh, it's really fun. Now, not every single Final Fantasy entry, to me, is a big, grandiose adventure, but a lot of them are. So I'm just naming the series in general. Some highlights for me would be Final Fantasy IV. I actually played it on the Vita, but I do have it on the Pixel Remaster Collection here, and it is amazing. You're definitely going on that big adventure there, different towns. And then another great one is Final Fantasy IX, which I recently played a couple years ago and absolutely loved it. I do have my original copy from when I was a teenager here, but I never beat it on the PS1. I beat it on the Switch. And those to me are like perfection. Other Final Fantasies, there's that adventure, but they're a bit more linear. So you could argue that yes, Final Fantasy X is a big adventure. Even, to a certain degree, Final Fantasy 13 could be a big adventure. It's whatever you classify as what a big adventure is. I mean, the original game, Final Fantasy 1, is a big adventure. I mean, it truly is. It really shocked me how interesting it was for how old it was, and all the places you got to go and different people you were meeting. Really cool. Not the same sense of variety, but you get a lot of that variety in some of the other games. So definitely, hands down, Final Fantasy series as a whole, yes, you are getting that big sense of adventure. I would argue that maybe Dragon Quest has it a bit more, because it's more traditional, and Final Fantasy has done so many crazy things. Like, I didn't really find Final Fantasy 16 as a big, grandiose adventure. It just didn't feel that way for me. But Final Fantasy 1, yes. Final Fantasy 9, absolutely. Now, to me, a series that I have to mention, because to me it kind of is the ultimate in adventure and the ultimate for childhood nostalgia, is Pokemon. 100%. Like, this is literally the biggest adventure JRPG you're going to get in terms of like something a bit new that's not medieval. So if you want Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, go for it. Go in that realm. But if you want something a little different, Pokemon. I know it's like, wow, that's the most overrated series of all time. Sure, but to me, when it comes to big adventures, it's like way up here. I hold it very highly. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't really like Sword Shield, and I didn't really like, Violet and Scarlet. So, leaving those out, because they still are big adventures, so you can still really like those, but they're just not my personal favorites. But You know, the original, what an adventure that was. You're literally a kid who leaves home and goes on an adventure to different towns, beating gym leaders, meeting different people, solving mysteries. Like, it's the perfect iteration of adventure to me. Now, you don't go across the world, you stay in a region, but within that region, there are so many different types of towns. Like, you'll go to a more traditional looking town that feels kind of like ancient Japan, but then right up the hill you'll end up at, you know, a desert area, and then it will start snowing, and it's great. It's perfect for that. That's why I love it so much, and I think why the JRPGs I like, you know, Dragon Quest, Pokemon, they all give you that sense of adventure where you're going to different towns. It's wonderful. You know, Pokemon is not for everybody because of the collecting aspect, and I'm not really into that either. I kind of stick with a party of 6 the whole game, and kind of, that's it. That's how I do it. For me, it's that feeling of getting to a new town and seeing what there is there. What is there to check out? It's so exciting. I love the series for that. Great music. It's so much fun, and there's always like, you know, something, you know, outside of a town to check out, like some weird factory you have to go to, or a weird hideout you have to go to, or some electrical power plant you need to go solve a problem at. It's really fun, and because it's modern day, you know, you go in people's houses and it feels kind of like maybe this could be real. So that's why I just love the series. Another big adventure JRPG that I gotta mention is Grandia. This is my PS1 copy, which I actually played on the Switch. So the Switch is the one that I actually beat, but I do own it for PS1 because it's such a great game. Grandia is exactly what the title says. It's grand, it's grandiose, and it's kids going on an adventure all across the world. So, I mean, amazing. With anime graphics, it's kind of the perfect comfort, whimsical, charming, big adventure JRPG. So I highly recommend it. It's just a kid who wants to go on an adventure. His name is Justin. It's the most 90s thing ever. You gotta check it out if you haven't. I mean, I'm saying this because I recently just played it myself. Like, it's not like I've been, you know, I played it 20 years ago. I literally played it like a couple years ago, and I absolutely loved it. It's exactly what you want if you're like, I want one of those games where you go from town to town. Grandia. Play Grandia. And lastly, a series that I just got into, which fits the bill for me and what I like, is Star Ocean. Now, I've only played 2 Star Ocean games. I've played the Divine Force, and I've played the Second Story R on the Switch. So, I love them both. It's hard for me sometimes to decide which one I like more. I played the Divine Force first, so I have a bit of a bias to it because it was my first Star Ocean game, but then I played the Second Story R and thought it was phenomenal. So they're both kind of tied for me, and I know there's a bunch of other ones that I need to play, but from what I have played, this is a great, you know, JRPG for me. So if you're like me and you like what I'm going for here, then definitely check out Star Ocean if for some reason you missed it. Because like I said, I recently just got into the series, so I know that there are people out there who still haven't checked it out. I think a lot of people are getting into it now with this release, which is fantastic. You gotta check it out because it's that past versus future thing. You're always on a planet where there's a society that isn't as developed, and then there's the character who's from the really crazy futuristic planet, and he's coming, and you know, there's two worlds collide. I really like that. And then on the planet, you'll go from town to town and meet different people, and it's really, really great. So definitely check out Star Ocean if you haven't. I know there are other series out there that are big adventure JRPGs. Some of them I've played but just didn't really care for, so that's why I haven't mentioned them. However, there's some that I didn't mention because I haven't played them, and I also want to know what some of those are. So if you're like, hey, I know what you would like, put that in the comments, because this is my very favorite genre and style of JRPG. It's that big adventure thing. So if you got Pokemon meets Dragon Quest meets Final Fantasy in terms of like going from town to town, that's really what it is. It's going from town to town. Like I said, I love Persona. You're just not going from town to town. And I love, you know, Yakuza Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. You know, you're kind of in the same area. They're big areas. It's like Yokai Watch. It's very similar to Pokemon, except instead of going from town to town, the town itself is so big, you're almost going from like neighborhood to neighborhood. And it's very detailed, way more than Pokemon. And I remember when I first played it, I thought, this is so incredible. But at the same time, you don't get that sense of like adventure because you are kind of staying in your own town. It's not that it's not good, it's just not that kind of JRPG. So I love other JRPGs for sure, but this one, this style, that's my favorite. Thanks again, guys, for watching today. I'm really excited to hear what picks you put in the comments, and of course, please subscribe and like, and I'll see you guys in my next video.